A few weeks ago, I talked about the three pillars of Survivor and Big Brother strategy. You have the social, the strategic, and the physical games. And in that video, I kind of pitched the idea that maybe it's less about those individual pillars and more of a Venn diagram of sorts, with overlap from the strategic aspect encompassing the social and the physical. I think I probably need to edit that Venn diagram a little bit from the last time I showed it, but the social game is talked about a lot, as is the strategy around it. And for the most part, people love to watch the challenges, the physical aspect, the physical component, endurance, wrestling, obstacle courses, puzzles.
This is the kind of puzzle you solve in an instant, and Spencer just did. Spencer wins individual immunity, solving the puzzle in less than 15 seconds. I gotta tell you, we have tested that puzzle a lot. Nobody ever has done it that fast, ever.
But what about the strategy around the physical games of these shows? What about players who didn't take on challenges at face value, but went one step further? Ladies and gentlemen, internet, my name is Peridiam, and let's talk about 5 times players went one step further and hacked challenges to get ahead. Also, FYI, if you're not sure what hacking is supposed to mean, it's basically when someone uses a clever solution to a tricky problem. Sometimes they're thinking outside the box, literally, or being creative. These are 5 different instances where players applied more unusual means to succeed. I talked about one hack not long ago, which was Randy tricking Ace in Survivor Gabon to mislead him into going into the wrong direction in a blindfold challenge, but that's actually not going to be one of the 5 here. Let's talk about the first one. It is Stephen Fishback in Survivor Tocantins when he won a challenge called Propeller Heads, involving an obstacle course to solve a simple math algorithm. For this challenge, you had to run through the course, memorize the pattern, and then head back the way you came and input the numbers, relying on memory and basic math. The 4 symbols were on a rotating pole, and thus it could become confusing to remember the exact sequence on your first go. JT took a quick lead and lapped Steven. He went up and back twice before Steven even got to the end of the course once. But Steven only needed one go. Despite taking forever in the sand dig, falling off of the balance beam like 10 times, and being just physically drained, at least it looked that way, he made his way back to the table to do the math, and unlike the rest of his tribe mates, he put all 10 symbols on his table on his first time back. He then applied simple math, and he beat JT by just a few seconds, despite JT having a massive lead. So what happened? Well, Jeff Probst asked Steven the same question. How did you remember every number in one go when every other person had to take at least 2 trips? Basically, Steven assigned a number to each symbol, 1 for plus, 2 for minus, 3 for multiply, and 4 for divide, and then created a sequence of 2 numbers. The first 5 symbols were one number, and the second 5 were another. Kind of like memorizing your phone number, the human brain only holds so many digits before it starts to taper off. By simplifying the memorization, Steven was able to avoid needing to run back and forth again and again and again. And despite falling way behind initially, proved it only took one clever little trick to win his first immunity.
Steven back with his first set of symbols. He was out there a long time. How many can his brain hold? With only one look at the symbol, Steven's doing all of this on one pass. Steven is right. Steven wins immunity. Oh my God, I want immunity. I can't even believe it.
Let's talk about Amanda Kimmel. Very underrated player, I think, who doesn't get enough credit for her challenge prowess. Remember, she played in back-to-back seasons with China and Micronesia, and both times reached that final tribal council, both times winning the final immunity challenge of the season. And that's why she's coming up twice on this list, with 2 clever maneuvers in both of those challenges that clinched her a spot at the final tribal council. For Survivor China, she competed in the final challenge called Broken China, which involved the players balancing porcelain dishes on a wobbly balancing beam. Every so often, Jeff would tell them to add another type of dish to their stack, making it increasingly more difficult to balance the stack. And I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to balancing stuff, usually people tend to put things upright. After all, I don't put my dishes upside down on surfaces, pretty much for any reason. So when approaching this challenge, initially Amanda and everyone else were balancing the various dishes right side up, which eventually caused the elimination of 2 of the players. It came down to Amanda versus Denise, and while both of them had balanced the same types of dishes in the exact same way, Amanda took the next dish and pulled a fast one and flipped her dish upside down. She then repeated this process again, giving her structure a little bit more stability in the home stretch. She knew the structures weren't long to last and were identical between the two of them up to this point, so by flipping the bowl, she changed direction. Denise's upright bowls proved not stable enough, and down they went.
Amanda makes a strategic move and goes the other direction.
All right, Amanda, what do you think?
What do you mean?
Make a deal?
You don't want to give up easily, do you?
Denise loses concentration. Amanda wins the final immunity challenge.
Likewise, in the final challenge of Micronesia the next season, Amanda competed against Parvati and Suri in a challenge called the ball drop. This challenge required players to balance a small metal ball on a wooden beam divided into sections with 2 paddles on either side holding those sections up. Over time, they would add more sections of the beam to make it increasingly longer and more difficult to balance. The challenge took place over 5 rounds, with each round proving tougher than the last, and while very minor, there is one small change, like Amanda's previous win, that she pulled off that assisted in her winning this challenge. When gripping the beam with the paddles, players always held the handles with the bottom of their wrists facing downward, and initially this didn't make a difference. But in round 3 and 4, she switched up her method. She held the beams underhanded with her wrists facing upward this time, giving a rest to parts of her wrists, changing where the pressure was being applied. This allowed her to relax her grip when overhanded so that when she made it to the final round, round 5, she switched back to an overhanded grip and had more strength with those muscles, enough to outlast Suri and win the challenge. Suri, on the other hand, maintained an overhanded grip the entire time, and because this final round would not have a rest and would come down to endurance, meaning they couldn't adjust their grip at any point, eventually Suri's overhand grip gave out sooner. It's a small detail, but it goes a long way.
This could be the round that decides it all. Here we go. Amanda going underhand this time. Suri sticking with the same grip. Wherever you're holding it, do not move it. Suri loses her concentration. Amanda wins final immunity and is guaranteed a spot at the final tribal council.
You know what? Let's stick around in Micronesia and talk about Parvati and James. In a tribal challenge in the pre-merge called United We Stand, you probably will remember this one, James the Gravedigger hacks a challenge rather impressively and wins it pretty much all on his own. The task at hand involved each tribe ferrying 2 of their players across small beams with lily pad-esque platforms on top, enough to fit maybe both of your feet. Each tribe was given 2 of these beams, and they were intended to be used as stepping stones to give the players on top of them a path from one structure to the next. This challenge was first held 3 seasons prior, and Parvati lost it, and this time she was not letting history repeat itself. Because James was such a big guy, a strong guy with some massive muscles on him, instead of alternating the 2 lily pad beams to create a path, here is the hack. James just picked up the beams, carrying one of his tribe mates, and literally walked them across the water. Jeff was stunned and impressed, and hey, wasn't breaking the rules. Even when Parvati fell off of the lily pad into the water and James's tribe had to go back to transport her again, it didn't really make a difference. This small maneuver, this slight change in strategy, easily gave them the win and broke the challenge, so much so that the next time we saw it 10 seasons later, they didn't even use poles. And then they did go back to poles and go wrong, and I think they just kind of made a house rule where you can't do what James did. That's not allowed. That's hacking. Too much hacking. Too big brain. Or big muscle.
Wow, Irai trying to outthink the challenge. Not using 2 poles.
Which way to go?
James carrying the pole. The rest of the tribe keeping it steady. If it works, it is a great strategy. Malakal now using Irai strategy. Are they too late?
Okay, my foot's up. Up. 1, 2, 3. Up.
The 4th hack comes in the way of another tribal challenge. Taking place in a more recent season than the previous ones, we have the Yawa tribe from Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers, who, in the pre-merge portion of the game, came from way behind to not only win a challenge, but absolutely obliterate it. Again, it wasn't even close, all because of one little hack. The challenge was called Disky Business, and it involved every tribe member pulling on a rope connected to a disc in the center. One by one, each player had to place a block on the disc to spell out the word immunity. The trouble was that this required a lot of coordination between every person, because if one person had too much slack on the rope, The disc would angle itself and the blocks on top would collapse, which we saw happen a lot. Initially, the Yawa tribe was in the lead, taking it slow and steady and getting their blocks placed nice and neat. They even at one point had the word spelled out entirely, until it fell. Meanwhile, the other two tribes were at least halfway toward victory, and this is where things get interesting. The Yawa tribe was so far behind, they began to hastily speed up their movement to catch up. In their endeavor, it seems they cracked the code to winning this challenge easily. And I'm not sure who should get credit for this one of the tribe. It might just be like a tribe-wide fair share, but Jessica is the first to speak on it. The strategy for Yawa went from being slow and steady like everyone else to fast and tense. Each of the other 3 tribe members pulled hard on their rope to create no slack whatsoever. The disc became so stable in the middle that balance was barely a concern. This allowed each member to fast walk back and forth, placing their blocks almost with reckless abandon to where they caught up and then won the challenge, coming in first. At one point, each of the 3 tribes were on their last letter at the same time, but it didn't matter. Yawa was cakewalking through this. Lesson to be learned: slow and steady doesn't always win the race.
We got the tension, Mike. You just walk.
Mike, we got the rope.
Let go.
Yawa with a completely new strategy. Yawa's already halfway there. Mike with their
Gotta
5th.
hold it with.
Yawa's strategy may be paying off.
Just walk it back, Mike.
Jessica places the 7th letter for Yawa. We win, Jess. We win.
We got it!
Yawa wins immunity. We're looking for second.
For the final hack of today, I'm gonna be straightforward. We got Yul Kwon no-scoping a cannonball through the bottom of a rowboat, taking it home for his tribe on Survivor Cook Islands. I love this hack, this clever little workaround. It's so simple, yet so effective. This challenge is called Depth Charge, and it involves the players paddling rowboats above a shallow surface where they must align a glass-bottom sniper scope crosshair of sorts with a mechanism underwater. When the crosshairs are lined up with the mechanism, they drop a cannonball through a hatch to release a set of buoys. And eventually they would use these buoys to form a word, of course, a puzzle, which wins them the challenge. Initially, the opposing tribe, the Raro tribe, not Yul's tribe, had pulled ahead. They managed to successfully line up their crosshairs, doing it the usual way the challenge was intended, and drop cannonballs, triggering the buoys free. Given this was the trickiest part of the challenge by far, had Raro managed to get their 3rd one, they likely would win. But aligning the crosshairs was proving tricky. The boat had to be completely parallel between the underwater mechanism where you had to drop your cannonball, and the crosshairs had to be perfectly aligned, otherwise you would miss. Yul's tribe missed continuously, falling way behind, until Yul decided to get clever. He realized the crosshairs were only there to assist them, but they weren't required to be used. Instead, Yul did what was easier for him. He looked over the side of the boat and aligned the cannonball chute with the mechanism and then just pulled the trigger. This proved to be a lot easier and way more effective. His tribe went on to get 2 more buoys this way, catching up to the opposite tribe, and then for the 3rd set of buoys, he didn't even look over the edge of the boat. He just opened up the cannonball hatch and used that as his crosshairs because it was literally right where he needed to drop it. And he did. And it worked. At one point, Yul was so excited from discovering his hack, he began to tell his tribe his new strategy, and they all had to shush him, shh, so the other tribe wouldn't hear him. And I don't think they did.
I can spot the thing through the...
We're gonna lose all our
Raro
cannonballs.
just wasted a cannonball. They weren't paying attention. Dropped it right through the chute. What's that?
No, please.
Jonathan getting frustrated by me.
And that's 5 times, technically 6 times, Survivor players hacked challenges. There are a lot of other great examples I didn't bring up. We have Vesepia's journal, Ozzy moving the coconuts under the water, Penner digging up those bags in a similar fashion, the Moto Tribe squad on the balance beam of Survivor Fiji, or even Boston Rob's tribe in All Stars just jumping off that platform to give him the ability to keep rushing through a challenge he was clearly really good at. There are a lot of these little moments that you might miss, and I don't blame you, but they do play a major part in deciding the course any season can take. Just imagine if Yul doesn't figure that out. Do we want to live in that timeline? Feel free to let me know others that I may have missed. Regardless, thank you guys so much for being along for this really long off season of Survivor. But in the end, my name is still Peridiam saying thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to smash that like, oh God, I can't do it. This is not one of those life hacks videos. I'm sorry guys. I'll see you when I see you. Where do we go from here?
You want me to take the gamble of running across with one of these really quick?
No, let's all do it.
Blue is going for broke. Everybody gonna get on barrels and try to roll their way to the end. It's an incredible strategy if it works.
Go, Sierra.
Screen falls. Mic is off. Everybody's got to go back.